Hello and welcome to Senior Voice. My name is Pauline Martin and with me is Gunter David, a fellow panelist. Today's program will be in two parts. A focus on general nutrition and the wealth of information available today. And then part two, a closer look at the meals available at the Windsor Senior Center and the Meals on Wheels program. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Mary Noon, a registered dietitian with Hartford Hospital, and Michelle Mattia, registered dietitian at ShopRite in Enfield. For the purpose of our conversation, let it be understood that the word diet does not refer to a weight loss program, but rather a general nutrition guideline. Are the guidelines for a senior diet different from a general adult diet?
I think seniors are a very diverse group and have very different needs. But generally speaking, seniors need to cut back on calories. As we age, we need fewer calories, but we also need very nutrient-dense food sources. So we need to have protein and vitamins, and water is one important element as well that we often see lacking.
For years, we've been told to follow the food pyramid as a general nutrition guideline. The latest information we have heard is that the food pyramid is not current and that the plate is in. Now, is this true, and how does it work? And is the plate a better guideline for portion control? Would the plate be used for all meals? And if so, how does that work for breakfast?
Can you start that?
Okay.
Sure. Really, what they did to update the food guide pyramid was take all the same food groups and put them in a visual plate form so that we have something that is a nice visual to make sure all those pieces of the pie are really on the plate. So really, if you boil it down, they're suggesting more fruits and vegetables, half of our plate being fruits or vegetables. So if you try to include a fruit or a vegetable at each meal and snack, we can generally get into that 5 to 9 servings a day. And the other half of the plate, they're suggesting about a quarter of our plate being grains, most of them, or at least half of them being whole grains whenever possible, to make sure that we get more fiber in our diet. And on the other half of that plate as well is about a quarter of our plate being lean protein. And if somebody is not doing animal protein, they could do the non-animal protein, such as the beans and lentils and seeds and nuts and nut butters and soy type products. Off of the plate is actually a little circle showing the need for some milk or a milk substitute, reminding us to get some calcium and vitamin D in our meals and on our menus as well. So really, we don't segment our plate in halves and quarters and fractions. So it's just a reminder to get most of those components on our plate or in our bowls whenever possible. So breakfast, we're still trying to get more of these components. We're trying to get more color on our plate. So it's a nice reminder to speak to each of those categories and make an effort to get more of them on our plate more of the time.
Well, what about breakfast?
You can take a simple breakfast staple. This time of year, oatmeal is popular because it's cooler outside. So you start with those oats, and that could be your whole grain. But you don't want to stop right there. There's no color on your plate. There's really not much for protein. So you could add, whether it be nuts or seeds to that, or you could make it with some low-fat milk. You could slice some banana and top that, or add some berries. So it's all about adding the different food groups to that plate or bowl or whatever it happens to be to have a more well-rounded, nutrient-dense meal.
Right.
Okay.
And as Michelle said, you don't always have to have vegetables at breakfast, but maybe vegetables for a snack mid-morning, and that would take care of that quarter of your plate.
Okay. Now, in the course of our conversations, several terms were bandied about with which I was unfamiliar. Can you explain these words in lay terms? And they are free radicals, antioxidants, omega-3, and BPA.
You can
Well-
take any of those and get started.
Well, we could talk about free radicals. You're right. Free radicals can be difficult to understand, but what you have to just remember is that they are highly unstable oxygen compounds in cells that damage cells. So they're very undesirable to have because they have been linked to aging and chronic disease. And I think Michelle has a great little example of how that kind of works in lay terms.
I think we all like visuals, and I think everybody is cut into an apple or a piece of fruit and left it on the counter for some amount of time. And over time, and it doesn't take much time, there has that browning effect.
Right.
So you can think about that browning effect as being oxidation because it's exposed to oxygen. That's exactly what that is. So really think about free radicals being problematic there, causing that brownage. And one thing to slow that browning could be an antioxidant in the form of lemon juice or orange juice or something that you could squeeze onto that to slow that, looks like aging process or browning process. So I think it's a nice way to think about that with that visual. And that's exactly what an antioxidant is. It's really just a compound that's found primarily in our fruits and vegetables that can slow that process. They can control, stop, or limit these processes from happening and really spiraling out of control in our body.
What is omega-3?
So omega-3 is a kind of polyunsaturated fat. It has been linked with protecting our heart and having a beneficial effect. It also is important for our immunity. And the big source that everybody thinks of is fish, particularly fatty fish, like salmon, sardines, tuna, even shellfish. All fish has a certain amount of omega-3s, and we advocate for that with our clients.
And what is BPA?
BPA is really just a component that is added to plastic to make it more flexible. And it's found in many of our household goods, our plastics, especially those that we store our food in, the food containers, as well as our canned goods. It's in the lining of that as well. And it's generally regarded as safe, but there has been some concern that it is carcinogenic, and there's a link to cancer as well. So I think that's why you see on the market many things are advertised as BPA free. So we're kind of removing that from many of our items. But a couple tips really is looking at the bottom of those items. If it has a 7 there in the recycling triangle, that might show you that there is some BPA in there. Maybe not microwaving those items at high temperatures. Some people even try not to put them through the dishwasher at high temperatures. Using alternative sources to hold our food, porcelain and glass and stainless steel, might make some people feel more comfortable. I think that's really it for my tips.
Right. And, rest assured there is no BPA in any kind of baby bottles or sippy cups, anything like that. Connecticut was one of the first states to ban BPA in that usage, and the United States has banned that since 2012. So we can rest assured that there's none involved in those kinds of products.
Okay.
All of us are aware that metabolism affects the rate one burns food that is consumed. One assumes that exercise increases metabolism. Does age affect it? How can one maintain the best metabolic rate?
Do you want me to get started on?
Yeah, you're the exercise expert.
I'm also an
so-
exercise physiologist, so I can speak to that portion as well. Generally speaking, our metabolism does slow over time, mostly because we're less active, we're sitting more, and when we're less active, we oftentimes lose muscle mass over time. So essentially, when you lose muscle mass, your metabolism does slow. So that's the biggest concern. And also, if we go extended periods of time without eating, our food, our meals, or our snacks, our metabolism can slow a little bit. It kind of goes into that starvation mode. So we want to make sure that we are eating consistently throughout the day and not skipping meals. Now, some things that we can do to increase our metabolism over time is exercising, especially strength training or weight-bearing activities. So it doesn't mean that you have to go to the gym. It just means that you have to even use gravity to apply some strain on the muscles. So my favorite to show especially the senior population, is really just standing up out of the chair and then right back down multiple times to strengthen the leg muscles, which are some of the largest muscles in the body. So strength training and conditioning is important. And I would say it's even more important than just the cardiovascular activity, which you may not get as much strain on your muscles, except the heart muscle. You get a lot of benefits with the heart there, with the cardio.
But what I see in counseling my patients is oftentimes they're skipping meals, you know, they eat twice a day, they hardly eat anything, and that is really what has a negative effect and slows your metabolism tremendously. So I recommend that patients or clients eat 3 meals a day and even include some snacks. Every time you eat, you rev up your metabolism. So to put in a few snacks mid-morning or afternoon or even an evening or a later night snack is a good thing to do.
Okay. Eat locally grown foods and eat foods in season. These are catchy phrases that are heard frequently nowadays. Now, presumably, one reason for this is to promote and sustain local farming. Another is that locally grown food is assumed to be fresher and therefore more nutritious since it can be picked at peak ripening time. But is this true? In today's world of high-speed travel, what is considered local food?
I think Michelle Fee from ShopRite has a lot to say about that.
Okay.
I think locally grown is one of those terms that we're not really sure how to define, just like natural. It has a certain connotation that you can connect to it, but we don't know exactly what local means. How many miles does that mean? How many states can that spread? So I really looked it up, and it does give us some sort of a radius to think about. And if we want to put a number on it, it's somewhere around 400-mile radius or in the same state. But, you know, it would be something with a similar climate to you at that time of year. So that kind of gives us an idea of more what locally grown is. But I talked to our store owner about the timeline of getting produce from out of state and things that aren't local, and I was surprised how quickly we get this produce. This time of year, we get a lot of our produce from Chile and Mexico. And believe it or not, something can be picked and it can be in our warehouse in New Jersey the very next day. Our warehouse is emptied every single day, shipped out to all of our stores, and displayed that next day as well. So one way that I looked at it, as far as losing nutrition over time, is that our produce could lose more nutrition sitting in our refrigerator or in our fruit bowl than it did from the whole process of getting to our store. So I thought that was interesting, that it really does get to us pretty quickly.
Okay. Local grown food implies fresh foods, no processing. WinTV has shown several programs by a group here in town that adheres to a raw food diet. In fact, while we were collecting our thoughts about this program and thinking about the raw foods programs, the raw food advocates rather, an article appeared in our February 20th Hartford Courant. Every raw foods advocate who comes to the studio seems quite healthy and active after several years of eating this way. There are many testimonials about how their health has improved, no more BP issues, no illnesses, and no arthritic symptoms, all without medication. Can you comment?
I think the trend that we're really seeing is that more fruits and vegetables and a greater plant-based diet is really embraced by many of the diets that we see out there now. So they come under different titles, but many of them have the same components to them, being more fruits and vegetables, more plant-based foods, more whole grains, and less of meats and red meats and processed foods in general. Mm-hmm. So if you take out a lot of the junk, or the junk foods in particular, that's really what remains, those few things that we talked about in the My Plate or what was in the food guide pyramid. So no doubt would we be healthier if we focus on those foods. Would we be just as healthy cooking some of those foods? Possibly. Yeah, and some foods, when cooked, we get more nutrition out of them, as in tomato products. We get lycopene and antioxidants from that. So it's all about balance. I don't know that we have to look at it from an extremist point of view, But
Right. And, you know, the raw food diet may not be for everyone. It's very difficult to follow. And if you're in a household with even just a spouse, it can be very cumbersome to work with.
And we do want to make sure that we wash our produce fully and carefully as well, because there could be a risk for foodborne illness if we are eating things raw, especially in an aged population, or if anybody's going through any kind of cancer treatments, or any compromised immune system would be problematic. So it may not be for everybody. Always talk to a dietitian before starting any specific dietary program.
I'm just wondering, when we talk about raw food, what about meat? No meat, no chicken, no...
It is limited in a lot of meat, which limits, when you take out entire food groups, you really take out many vitamins, minerals, and nutrients that can be problematic.
Right, it becomes very challenging to get all your nutrients in, and that's why it's advisable to see a dietitian, or at least talk to your doctor who can refer you to one.
Okay. There are many diets and food plans in addition to raw foods. A physician may prescribe some for specific medical conditions such as diabetes and cardiac, and diets that are very common among seniors. The barrage of new information is constant and sometimes contradictory, so subsequently questions seem endless. We do have a couple of general questions that we wanted to ask, such as sugar. How much is too much? Is there a direct relation between sugar consumption and the development of diabetes? What is your opinion on alternative sweeteners, sweet and low? Agave, nectar, stevia leaf, and honey. Can you comment about sodium in one's diet? Some, none, or necessary?
There's a lot of topics in that, that question.
Right.
Where to start?
Yeah. You know, doctors do prescribe certain diets related to their medical condition, and I see lots of patients or clients who have diabetes, heart disease, and I'm able to plan a specific diet based on their lifestyle, their needs, their weight history, lots of different factors that come into play as to an individualized diet that I'm going to present to the client. Sugar is something that, you know, what I think we're saying, and in the dietary guidelines for 2010, is we're saying to really limit added sugars. So that's really what we want to eliminate or really cut back on in our diet, and that's using extra sugar, high fructose corn syrup, or looking at beverages in particular. You know, the soda, the lemonades, the sweetened iced tea, those are the first things that we should take a look at. But eating a high sugar diet doesn't necessarily mean you're going to develop diabetes. There are many factors involved, and one of the most critical factors, or the closest linked, is really linked to your weight and your BMI. Once your BMI starts getting in the 25 to 30 range, our risk increases, but once it hits 30, which is obesity, we really see that jump, or your risk increases.
What is BMI?
Greatly. Your body mass index, which is, instead of the Metropolitan Life Tables where you determine if your weight is within the correct range, it is a mathematical formula based on your height and your weight. And your doctor can tell you your BMI. They probably calculate it every time you come in. A dietitian can help you in that regard as well. That becomes a critical thing to look at. And as far as different sugars, it really depends. You know, someone who does have diabetes, you know, we want to limit some of those added sugars, and we may look to some of the alternatives that you mentioned. And it really is a comfort issue. You know, a lot of people don't want to use the artificial sweeteners for a variety of reasons. We may work in regular agave nectar or sugar or stevia or one of the other things that you mentioned here. So that's very personal. You know, I counsel patients who use Splenda, and I counsel patients who rather use stevia or even just a little brown sugar that we can calculate into a diabetic diet. It's not a no sugar at all diet.
Right. And it's good to have options, because there's no one thing that works well for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the sodium?
Sodium, a lot of people think that sodium, they think about their table salt shaker, but there's sodium in so many other foods that you don't see and that may not even taste salty. So the dietary guidelines have changed for multiple populations over the age of 53, I believe it is. Certain ethnic groups, people that have a history of any kind of cardiac events, certainly want to try and keep their sodium content or their intake down to about 1,500 milligrams. So that's 1.5 grams, which
A
adds
day.
up quickly.
A
Very
day.
low.
Right?
Per day.
A day,
So if we're
okay.
eating 3 meals, that might be about 500 milligrams per meals, and that wouldn't be taking into account snacks or beverages that might have some sodium in there as well. But sodium is an electrolyte, and it is important to have some in our body. It's important just for your heart to pump every day. So, but those that have chronic disease, they want to make sure they have a handle on that, and making sure that they don't overconsume processed foods, or those with preservatives that are oftentimes in the form of salt. So again, meeting with a dietitian to make sure that your diet is adequate, but not too high in the sodium is really important.
Yeah.
So reading the labels
Reading
and
labels
finding the
Right.
is
sodium.
very
Uh-huh.
important.
But you know, fruits and vegetables don't have a label, but that really isn't a problem because fruits and vegetables in the produce section really have hardly any or negligible sodium. You really wouldn't have to worry about it.
You
And
can't
then
get
you
in a lot
know-
of trouble in the produce
No.
department.
Right.
Canned soups,
Yes.
800, 880
Right.
milligrams.
Yeah.
So you can see how that would go over that allotment of even the 500 a meal.
Right. And look at the serving size too. A can of soup is oftentimes 2 or 2.5 servings.
But we eat the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
After our planning group began discussions about nutrition, there was a groundbreaking study released that showed incredible heart health benefits following a Mediterranean diet. Can you talk about the study and the food plan?
The Mediterranean diet really has been around for quite some time, which is very different in the makeup from what our food guide pyramid was years ago. So really the foundation of it is whole grains and fruits and vegetables, more produce. Again, we see that trend continue with all of these heart healthy promoting diets,
Right.
quote unquote diets. Generally less processed foods, less meats and red meats overall, maybe some alcohol, 1 to 2 glasses per day, maybe allotted in that diet,
Particularly red wine.
particularly red wine.
You know, we usually use the limits of 1 glass for a woman and 2 glasses would be the limit for a glass of wine or an alcoholic beverage on this diet. But of course, you need to talk to your physician because there are interactions with medications that this may be contraindicated. But I think legumes are also a big part of the diet, so lentils and chickpeas and beans become very front and center in this diet, as well as fish. But it's a very healthy diet. And I think another aspect is that they really want you to sit down with friends and family and eat these meals and enjoy them. And it's not just, you know, eating on the run, and having that good social interaction as well is very beneficial in this plan. And it's not only been linked to lowering heart disease, but also cancer, certain kinds of cancers, even Alzheimer's has lowered its risk, and Parkinson's. So there's lots of great news
Benefits. Mhm.
regarding this Mediterranean diet. And herbs and spices. Instead of using a lot of salt, using more herbs and spices, using olive oil instead of butter.
A lot of fresh foods make up the foundation of the Mediterranean diet.
Yeah.
Good. The fad diets are out there. One is eat for your blood type. Recently on Dr. Oz, there was a dermatologist advocating to eat for your skin type. Another diet we recently heard about is the pH diet. Can you comment on some of these food plans?
There is an entire wall at Barnes & Noble of different dietary books that you can follow. So, and there will be no end to it. It'll continue.
I think everybody's looking for a plan that they don't have to count calories or grams of fat, and they want to lose weight. So a lot of these things are attractive to people. Oh, I just have to eat these foods. Oh, it's based on my blood type. Oh, I want to lower my pH. So I think, or increase my pH in my diet. So I think a lot of these things are just very attractive and fun to follow, and a gimmick. But many of them you really can't sustain for very long. It becomes very cumbersome and difficult. Imagine if you had a family and you had several different blood types in the family. How would you keep everybody's food straight? It would be very difficult. But But the science behind the blood type diet just really isn't there. After reviewing various things, I think Michelle also hasn't really found much to back up the blood type diet. Really doesn't pan out over time. The research cannot be duplicated.
I think you're exactly right. People do like guidelines. They like to have information that they can fall back on to make their food choices, and they like recipes spelt out for them that they can follow. But the thought is if you go on a diet, you're going to go off the diet. So it's about making lifestyle change that you can sustain over time with foods that you enjoy. It's just like exercise. People ask me all the time, what is the best exercise? What should I be doing? The answer is something balanced, that you do in moderation, that you enjoy, that you can sustain. Same thing with foods. It has to be balanced in moderation that can be sustained.
Okay, yet another diet we discussed was the paleo diet, getting back to our caveman roots. Fish and meat are included, but in small amounts. Do we need to rethink our meal plans, such as adding vegetables to breakfast? Any comments?
I think it would be fantastic to add more produce to your breakfast. Oftentimes, if we're doing traditional breakfast foods, the easiest way to add veggies would be in egg scrambles or omelets, those sorts of things. Most people don't want to wake up and have a salad or a lot of roughage, but there is certainly a place for veggies in breakfast. But as far as the paleo diet goes, again, they're taking out entire food groups. It may not be balanced. It may be difficult and expensive to follow. So if it's something that you can't sustain, it could be problematic. And there is some nutrition that is lacking if you follow this to a T. And there's different variations of this too. Some incorporate some fasting, some incorporate some raw dairy, which of course for the senior population and most populations would not be appropriate at this time. It wouldn't be safe. So again, it goes back to the basics of nutrition. There's no magic pill. There's nothing perfect that fits everybody's plate as well.
Okay. Grains have been a part of human diet for a relatively short period of time over the ages. Now they are often genetically altered. Do you recommend grains like pasta or rice for seniors? What is wheat belly?
Well, we definitely recommend grains because there are a lot of wonderful grains out there. I think Michelle can talk a little bit about wheat belly, but there are many whole grains that we have research behind that help chronic disease like heart disease and diabetes that are very important. And you might want to experiment a little bit with a new whole grain instead of relying on, you know, brown rice. Maybe pick up some quinoa or some bulgur, buckwheat, and some of these things and give it a try and make a new pilaf or have it as a side dish.
Right, and this is really a controversial subject right now. And I do have the book here, and I haven't gone through it, but I did read some reviews on it. And what I believe the doctor is saying is that we're overeating a lot of wheat products and processed wheat products, and we're gaining weight, and most of that weight is gained in the midsection, which is the problematic fat that we gain. It's associated with many chronic diseases, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and just a whole host of other issues with that inflammation in our abdominal area. So he tries to draw connections between all these things. And if we were overeating the buckwheat and the bulgur wheat, we probably wouldn't be in this health state, but we're eating a lot of those processed foods that contain wheat. So again, this is another diet that is a low-carb diet that does take out, you know, almost an entire food group that takes out a lot of our fiber and B vitamins and other nutrients that we might not get as readily in some of the other food groups. So you certainly want to talk to your doctor about eliminating any kind of food group or starting any diet. But if you have a food allergy or a celiac disease or a wheat intolerance, that's something completely different. But you want to make sure that you're educated to carry out a gluten-free or a wheat-free diet so that you don't have these imbalances or deficiencies in your diet.
Exactly. And I see patients with celiac disease almost every day, and we counsel them and be sure that they are picking alternate grains and have a form of whole grains in their diet and have the full complement of nutrition.
Okay. What about the benefits of or possible issues associated with a vegetarian and a vegan diet?
I think those can be very restrictive. It really depends on how, on which food groups you eliminate or cut back on. A vegan diet is going to be the most restrictive and the most difficult to have a complete profile of nutrition, and anyone who would like to go on that diet would definitely see a dietitian. B12, zinc, so many things, protein, iron would come into play as far as making sure that these diets are complete. I often tell people, you know, try out being a semi-vegetarian. Maybe don't go vegetarian all the way, but, you know, have one day where you rely on beans or legumes or soy products, and the other day you have some chicken or fish. So some people include the dairy and the eggs. Some people want to just eliminate red meat, and that can even be kind of a vegetarian diet. But I think what's behind all this, again, is what we're seeing is more fruits and vegetables and grains. So all those things are good, but I think you need to see a dietitian, again, to be sure that you're getting the full complement of nutrients.
Thank you. We hear about the benefits of eating fish several times a week. How does this fit in with a vegetarian diet?
Like we said, there's really different levels of
Right.
almost a flexitarian or a vegetarian diet. Some do have the dairy and the egg, some have one or the other, some might consume some fish. So a true vegan would not have any animal products at all. It wouldn't even include honey. It would be that restrictive. So again, there is some fantastic benefits to the fish and the nutrients in those fish, like the omega-3s that we were talking about earlier. So if you want to do a specific vegetarian diet, you certainly would want to see a dietitian. I don't think we can stress that enough to make sure
Right.
that you're doing it in an educated way without any imbalances or deficiencies.
The WebMD states, if you are a younger woman, age 14 to 30, you are now laying down the bone mass you will have for the rest of your life. Decisions about birth control, diet, and other lifestyle choices can help determine your future bone density. If bone density is set early in life, what is the need for calcium consumption later in life to strengthen bones?
I think we need calcium and vitamin D in our diets to preserve what we have. So we don't want to regress. We want to be sure that our bones are at the optimal state. And if we're beyond that age group where we're not laying down any more bone mass, it's important to find out what your bones, how good, what shape they are in, and supplement as needed. Again, various medications may inhibit bone preservation, like steroid usages for various conditions. So those people have a higher need to replace the calcium and the vitamin D. However, you know, you can get calcium and vitamin D through your diet, which is probably the perfect way to get it. And maybe you don't need much of a supplement, or maybe a very small amount. I think vitamin D has taken a larger role lately as well, and it's not just calcium, and we're really figuring out that vitamin D is something, especially in this part of the country, many people are very deficient in.
Okay. So can seniors take too much calcium or dairy products, or does excessive calcium intake lead to kidney stones?
Very, very high dosages can promote kidney stones in people who have a history of kidney stones. So you really won't get into too much trouble if you stay within the RDA level, which is about 12,000 milligrams a day of calcium.
Thank you.
Are nutritional supplements necessary for seniors or for anyone? There's an abundance of them on the market. And another question is, should men avoid a multivitamin supplement with calcium?
For supplements in general, one thing to think about is the regulation, and most of them are not regulated by the FDA. So what the bottle says is in it may not be in it, or we may not be absorbing that full amount. And oftentimes people are taking the multivitamins, and they're taking vitamin water, and they might have an ample diet. So there could be some toxicity levels, and we could be overdoing. So sometimes more is not better. Sometimes less is more. So I would say that food first before you need a supplementation, and talk to your doctor and get the appropriate lab work to make sure that you are deficient before you try to supplement. because if you have enough, you don't necessarily need more.
Right. But you have to realize that there's always not an easy blood test for every mineral as well, or vitamin. So that's why you need the bone density test done periodically.
On another topic, it seems as if food allergies are rapidly increasing, so much so that sending a peanut butter sandwich to school with a child is discouraged. Is there a reason for increased food allergies?
There's many, many factors, and it's such a controversial topic right now, and there's more diagnoses for sure in the children, and oftentimes children do grow out of some of these food allergies too. But it is a serious topic where there's the true anaphylaxis, so the reaction that a child could have when exposed to peanut butter, even just airborne, they don't even have to consume it. They could have tightness in the throat, and they could physically stop breathing. So it is a serious topic, and why it's happening, there's many environmental factors that are generally associated with it. So there's still more research to do in that area, and I think we're moving in the right direction, but it'll take some time to get some definitive answers on why this is happening.
It seems as if Americans are obsessed with cleanliness, such as the daily shower and shampoo, the need to disinfect everything. The older generation often jokes about all the dirt they ate as children as building up their immunity. That brings us to the question regarding the 3-5-10 second rule popularized in a recent TV commercial. Do you have any comments on this?
Michelle and I were chuckling about that a little while ago, saying that it depends on where you drop it, you know, if it's in our house, our kitchen floor, or in a restaurant somewhere, if we wanted to pick it up and eat it.
And what you drop as well. Is it a sticky lollipop or is it a dry cracker? Could make a world of a difference. And who's eating it next?
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's
Not a lot of science behind that, if that's what you're looking for.
Not a lot of science.
Not a lot of science behind that one.
Okay. What is the impact of alcohol? We hear of the benefits of one drink a day for a long life, and especially the benefit of dark red wine.
right. I think we mentioned that a little
did,
bit
yes.
before. There is an antioxidant, a phytochemical that's in red wine called resveratrol, and that has been linked to helping protect our hearts. And I think that's what people are trying to achieve when they sip on their red wine. You can also get that, though, from having purple grape juice, not the white, but the purple grape juice, and having a cup of that can do the same thing. So again, it depends. If you're on medications that would not go well with alcohol, your doctor just is advising you not to have alcohol, because too much alcohol, as we know, can be a very nutritional complex problem, as well as a bigger problem. And it can also give our bodies too many calories, and that can be a problem as we grow older and we don't need those many calories.
Okay.
And it could then lower your inhibitions and to consume other calories and other snacks and foods as well. And not only does the resveratrol have a positive impact on our bodies, but I think just relaxing and having a glass of wine or having that 1 to 2 glasses of alcohol can reduce your stress levels, reduce your blood pressure, and have a nice social event. And I think that can really help with our overall health as well.
Right. It's not just what you eat, but how you eat it.
How you eat it.
There's no doubt that we are living longer and we are taller and stronger than ever before. Some of that is due to disease control and medical advancements, but some of it is due to better nutrition. Are there any additional comments that either of you would like to add at this point?
Again, I would say everything in moderation, and it kind of goes back to what our mothers told us. Really, eat your fruits and vegetables, get a good night's sleep, get out and play, be active and move. So it goes back to the very basics. Nothing is earth-shattering, groundbreaking research right now. It always goes back to that sound nutrition and being active.
You know, I agree with Michelle. You know, it's really getting back to basics and not finding, there's no magic pill out there that's going to do it. But I think every day you really have to think about, you know, making healthy choices and and trying the best you can to get those things into your diet. Many seniors have other obstacles or problems. You know, when we talk about seniors, we could be talking about someone who's 60 years old or 100 years old. So we really have to think about their access to food, their social situation, if they have problems with chewing or swallowing, or just need an extra hand to help them make some meals, maybe something very easy we can help each other out with.
Well, Michelle and Mary, I want to thank you for sharing your expertise with us this morning. I certainly have learned a lot, and I hope our audience will too. So this is going to bring to a close our part one of our nutrition program. Thank you again, and safe home.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Betty White, and I'd like you to meet my friend here. This is Red. He's a puppy with a very special job to do, to be a guide dog for someone who is blind. Together they'll travel the world in safety and with confidence. Guide Dogs for the Blind provide their services free of charge, thanks to the generosity of people like you. Please visit guidedogs.com to learn how to help today.
Welcome back to part two of our program on nutrition. In this section, we are welcoming a team from the Community Renewal team here in the north central portion of Connecticut. With us today are Stephanie Belding, CRT VP of Nutrition Services, and Jane Grant, Nutrition Manager with CRT. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie, can you share some of your responsibilities for the program?
Well, I oversee the elderly nutrition program for the Community Renewal Team. It's a federally funded program through the Older Americans Act, along with state dollars and client donations and private funding. And we have 33 locations where we serve congregate meals here in the greater Hartford area, along with Meals on Wheels that we also provide.
Thank you. And Jane, your responsibilities?
Yes, I provide the nutrition counseling to Meals on Wheels participants, and I also provide nutrition education to the congregate meal sites and to the Meals on Wheels meal participants as well.
Is there any, who actually plans the meals? And we're focusing particularly on Windsor Senior Center, but realize it applies to all of your facilities. And who publishes the menu listing?
Okay. The meals are prepared at 555 Windsor Street, and the menus are developed by a registered dietitian. They must meet the federal guidelines, which is 1/3 the dietary recommended allowance intakes, and each menu has to be, the menus are analyzed and submitted to the state for approval. We have to make sure that we have enough protein, enough fiber, that the sodium, as you heard in the first section, is around 782 milligrams is where we are, and everything in enough iron. It's always one of the questions, why do you put those garbanzo beans in with the chicken? We're trying to increase your fiber. And so we do 4 cycles a year. We do a fall, winter, spring, and summer cycle to change up the menu to give the seniors a variety of foods throughout the year.
About how many meals do you prepare on a daily basis?
For seniors, we do about 1,000 congregate meals, and we do about 1,300 Meals on Wheels. And then we also do our Head Start program and some other catering, so about 5,000 total a day.
When meals are not prepared on site, what special considerations are necessary?
Well, one of the keys, of course, is that we are limited with the time that the food is prepared to the time it gets to the senior center here. Our regulations say from the time it gets out of the oven or it's cooked, we have a 2-hour window to serving time. So the first amount of food doesn't actually start getting portioned out of Windsor Street until about 9:30, and it's on the truck and served to you by noontime to hopefully preserve the nutrients and keep it as fresh as possible.
Okay. Jane, you said you were an advisor, a nutritional advisor. Do you run educational programs for seniors concerning diet and general nutritional information?
Right, I'm a registered dietitian. Okay, and yes, I provide the nutrition education, like here in Windsor, 4 times a year. And the topics usually include whatever is in the media at the time, or if a lot of the seniors are asking specific questions about something, so we'll make the next topic pertaining to that.
Okay. And do you come at a set time or at the lunchtime or aside from lunch?
No, usually it's at lunchtime. I will arrange it with the cafe manager, so we'll pick a good date, so just to make sure there's no other activities going on. And usually once all the seniors are served, that's when I'll start.
Good.
Okay. Now we've heard that consuming fewer calories is beneficial to one's health. Do you recommend this for seniors? And how thin is too thin for seniors?
Okay. Well, in general, if someone is overweight, it's better to consider less calories. But what is considered overweight for someone under 65 and someone over 65 is different. According to the BMI, which is the body mass index, which is a calculation form that will tell you if you're overweight or not overweight. So if you fall between the range of 25 and 29, someone who's under the age of 65, you would be considered overweight. However, if you're over 65, it's ideal to be between the range of 25 and 29. It's better to be a little bit overweight because as we get older and when we get sick, we tend to lose weight, which we never put back on. So for our overall health, it's better to have a little bit more weight on us.
Huh. Well, that's interesting because I see so many seniors being very overweight.
Well, being very overweight is not healthy. So, but being a little bit. So their BMIs may be over 29. So if it's over 29, then it is recommended to lose weight because it's healthier for the heart. But being a little bit overweight is preferred.
Thank you.
Almost everyone is aware that overcooking vegetables robs them of their nutritional value. But here is the dilemma for seniors. Seniors need to have their vegetables cooked longer to make them easy to chew. One way to save the nutrition for the overcooked vegetables is to use the broth in soup or gravy. But seniors are less likely to be making soup or gravy. Can you make a comment about this dilemma?
Yes. Actually, another option of cooking vegetables to make them softer is actually roasting them. According to Mayo Clinic, it is suggested that roasting your vegetables is one of the healthier ways because you're making them softer by using dry heat, so the nutrients are not being leached out. So you could have your softer vegetables without actually losing your nutrition.
Meals on Wheels. Who is eligible? How does it work in Windsor? And are all Meals on Wheels cold?
Okay. Well, there's 2 types of Meals on Wheels programs. There's the federally funded program, which CRT operates in North Central Connecticut. And then there's also private Meals on Wheels where you're paying a fee for the service. The VNA has a private one, and there's some other organizations out there. On the federally funded program that we operate at CRT, And throughout the state, you have to be 60 years of age or older and assessed as being homebound. And if you are, then there are no income guidelines. Those are the only two requirements, over 60 and homebound. And then we would complete a form for you and check with your doctor for a diet order to make sure we're providing you with the right meals into your home, and then they would be delivered between 11 and 1:15 every day, Monday through Friday. We provide a hot lunch and a cold evening meal. And again, all of these meals are available regular, or we also offer modified diets such as a diabetic, low sodium, low fat, low potassium, and a lactose-free diet.
So how does one go about approaching you for those services?
You can refer yourself, and we will come out and do an assessment. Also, here in Windsor, your social service department is aware of our services, and you can contact the Elderly Services Division here in Windsor, too.
So you're closely linked with the social services of each town that you
Yes.
deal with. Okay.
But there seem to be other Meals on Wheels, because the ones we had, we didn't have to be homebound, which we're not, and they were warm,
Well, those are
and we paid.
right. Those are private Meals on Wheels, where ours is a federally funded program. We have to adhere to the federal guidelines, which are 60 years of age or older and homebound. If you're not homebound, that's why we have our congregate program where you can come and enjoy lunch. Your only requirement is that you be 60 years of age or older and make a reservation and have an opportunity to come and have a nutritious lunch and socialize with other seniors here at the
Oh.
Wilson Senior Center.
Are there any other comments that either of you would like to make in regard to the program?
No, we encourage you to get involved and come to the community center and have lunch and socialize and get involved in the other activity. And if you know of somebody who does need Meals on Wheels, the federal program is available, and it is a suggested donation of $2 a day per meal, and we send a donation letter at the beginning of the next month after you've had the meals with the suggested donation or whatever you can afford.
Oh, good. You know, it's something that I think seniors could enjoy, the camaraderie, the friendship that you have at these meals. And for $2 a day, you couldn't even go out and buy the ingredients for the meals. So I think that's wonderful. I really want to thank you very much for being here for us today and sharing that information with us. And hopefully it will encourage members of our community here in Windsor to join us for lunch sometime. Come and try us. You'll never know what you find.
Well, I've really enjoyed being here and thanking Pauline for her introduction and running the show. And hopefully our viewers have learned a lot from this program today. Thank you all our guests who gave us all this information. And I hope, viewers, that you'll be watching us another time. And thank you.